You've got to get your content to a point that your content is the answer to every question. When you have skills to do that, you can lead better, you can be a better friend, you can be a better listener, you can be a better business person, you can be a better entrepreneur. One of the easiest ways to become a better communicator is to just study communication. You don't have to go to school to study communication, it's happening all around you. And it just dispels the myth that being a good communicator is, I've got the gift of the gab, or they're just quick on their feet, or they just always know what to say.
At the lowest level, it starts with care.
Yet the big mistake that almost everybody makes when they're trying to communicate to other people is they tell the me story, the me, my, I story.
What is the goal of communication?
If you want to win as a communicator, the only thing that you have to definitely always do is...
Dude, so funny because I don't know if you remember, I first heard you in October of 2023 at Erwin's event, his first event of the arena.
Yeah.
And I, as someone who does, I think like when you're trying to become a better communicator, you become a student, you decide to be a
100%.
student, and then you start noticing great communicators.
Right.
And I would say, I mean, that day was jam-packed, probably, I don't know, 8 to 12 communicators that day. And you spoke, and this was the first time I saw you speak and heard of you. And you had an ability to get a room to include myself, somebody who like, I love being sold. But I love being sold like in a good way.
We all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And long story short, you got the whole room to get your book. And I think a lot of people ask me like, Omar, how do you get these kind of guests? You know, well, I just went up to you and said, hey man, I just started a podcast. You ever in Vegas?
Right.
You know, planted a seed. I don't know where that's going to go. It is cool to say like, where are we at? Like, maybe nine months.
9 months, yeah.
And then in that time, we had a moment where you came to the studio.
Right.
You did that conversation with Neil.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. And no, I appreciate you for being open to do this. And I know you said that you come to Vegas often, but more than that, I also wanted to highlight that sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes it does. And here we are at 7:30 in the morning.
Often it does, and it just takes time.
Yeah.
And it takes persistency. So it doesn't matter whether it's you asking me for a show or whether it's somebody at home that is watching this conversation right now and thinking that they'd like to have something to happen. It just tells you if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, that's good.
But you still got to create some space for it, right? You've still got to keep showing up. It's not like ask once and hope the other person's then going to chase up on the response. It's got to be like, hey, I see you're in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then stay true to the ask.
Yeah. And so, you know, Warren Buffett says that if you can better your communication, you can 2x your value.
Sure. At least,
yeah. And I've seen my finances change because I've been intentional.
Yeah.
Can we just start off by you defining what is the goal of communication?
Well, I mean, everything is communication, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, right? We're communicating in 1,000 different ways in every interaction we have. I think more about not what is communication, but what is good communication, or what is intentional communication with intention and purpose. If I take that a touch wider as well, is people often look at good communication as influence or persuasion or the ability to be able to, shape or steer an outcome. And that can get confused with manipulation.
Yeah.
Very easily. And the fine line between manipulation and influence to me is just integrity. It's, do you care enough to lead a conversation towards a purpose that supports and serves the outcome either of the moment or the other person more than you care about yourself? And when you have skills to do that, you can lead better, you can be a better friend, you can be a better listener, you can be a better business person, you can be a better entrepreneur, because of the fact that you don't have to be behind or ahead of the moment. So I'm going to share something pretty interesting. I didn't intend to go here today, but people, they cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. Yeah, almost every human being on the planet tries to write, perform, and edit at the same time in every conversation and interaction they go into. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to write in their head what they're saying whilst they're saying it, whilst they're thinking about the thing they just said. That's write, perform, and edit at the same time. It's stupid. So to be a more intentional communicator, you firstly have to say, well, there are many known moments that I'm stepping into that I care about that moment ahead of time, so I'm going to put some more thoughtful thought into being ready for it. And it just dispels the myth that being a good communicator is I've got the gift of the gab, or they're just quick on their feet, or they just always know what to say. Well, no, they just cared enough to say that I'm going to be a pro in that moment. I'm going to get ready for that moment. And I'm not going to have to overly think about what I'm saying in the moment because I'm building from a repertoire. Just like a great
really
musician could sit at a piano and not have to say, can you give me the sheet music? They're like, I know the notes, I know what I'm doing, therefore I can serve the experience and the environment that's around me.
Yeah, that's really good. I think about like, you're like in the overflow state. So like maybe it is second nature now, right? But Abraham Lincoln says, prepare yourself and perhaps your time will come.
Right.
And the reality, I think everyone doesn't realize that their time is coming, whether they prepare themselves or not.
Perhaps, but like it's easy to think it's second nature. And I think a lot of us fall into that lazy trap of like, just because somebody's good at something, you think they can stop trying. And it's not true. Like this morning at 5:15 a.m., I'm in the room where I'm speaking tomorrow without anybody else in there, working the floor, mapping the space, giving consideration to the tweaks and adjustments I'm going to bring towards my speech with nobody else in the room.
Wow.
I'm probably going to deliver a speech pretty close to something I've done before, but not the same. Why? Because I care enough to say who's in the room that's different, how's the moment different, why is this event and my place in the lineup different, and therefore you kind of raise your own bar of performance by raising your own stakes of what it is that you're doing and then getting ready for a higher level.
Wow.
And therefore it becomes easier to operate at the level that's been expected of you.
And if it becomes easy, you make it look ezy, and that's why it looks like an overflow.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Dude, that's so good.
But it's just obnoxious prep is what it really is.
So, I mean, I like that you say integrity because I'll be guilty, bro. Like because I'll oftentimes preach on a Sunday at my church.
Okay.
That's like the Omar pastor hat he puts on,
Yeah.
That I put so much time and intention in writing those sermons.
Right.
But when it comes to like teaching on social media, personal brand and all that stuff, I've been doing video for 15 years and I do. And maybe it's a level of conviction that I'm feeling right now because I will just be, hey, Omar, can you just do this web class? Dude, of course.
Yeah, sure. I got this.
Yeah.
What you become, though, is either a talented amateur or a lazy professional, if that's the route you're going in, right? And there are many talented amateurs out there. But if somebody's a talented amateur, it's pretty easy to beat them over time, right? If you just keep showing up and learning the skills, you keep putting in the practice, you keep working on getting better, you'll outpass any talented amateur. And we've seen this in our high schools, etc., right? Is the kid that was super talented at XYZ that was leaps ahead of everybody else in the program, then relied upon their brilliance in that environment. Fast forward 20 years, where are they now?
Yeah.
Like, unless they put the discipline into their skills, they just were lucky to stay on that level and they didn't get to work on the other things. And what pros do is they practice every day. What pros do is they spend more time practicing than they do on the field of play.
Yeah.
And the result of which is when they're on the field of the play, they're ready. And they're ready for those little moments that when you win those little moments, those compound up to the bigger things.
Really good. So for you, when did you realize like, I'm going to crush it at this?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I get there. I think there becomes an intentionality that if you want to win, you have to compare the whole of you to the whole of whoever else is in your field of play. It's very easy to look at what other people are doing, and social media space is a great example of that, right? Is like, well, my videos are better than blank, so why am I not blowing up? Or why don't I have the following that they have, etc. It's easy to bring the comparison. But an early mentor said to me, if you're going to compare, it's not a bad thing. You just have to compare the whole of them to the whole of you. I'm like, oh, that works. Compare the whole of with the whole of. So how does that relate to my story and where I'm at is to get better. I've just been a student of success. I just look at anybody who's better at anything than I am. And instead of saying, wow, well, I'll ask the question, how? Like, how do they do what they do? How have they done what they've done? And sometimes you're asking how in conversations with real people like we're in right now. Sometimes you're asking how of yourself and through observation and sitting back. One of the easiest ways to become a better communicator is to just study communication. And you don't have to go to school to study communication. It's happening all around you. As somebody who travels as much as I do, I get a PhD in behavioral science just by sitting in an airport watching people. Like it's happening all around. You can see actions, reactions, responses just from observing life. But too many people are like locked down in here on their cell phones everywhere they go, and they're not watching communication happen. And they're eroding their own skill because they're not aware of the consequences of what comes out of their mouth and how they show up in conversations.
Hey, question for you. What would your business look like if it got the attention that it deserved? you probably wouldn't even have a business problem. Most people don't have a business problem, they have an awareness problem. This is why you're invited to join me on the next Content to Cash challenge that is coming up. In 5 days, you're gonna be getting the system that I have implemented in my business that's allowed me to be a part-time 7-figure entrepreneur. Yes, because I built my personal brand online, it's opened up opportunity, but more importantly, it's given me more time to spend with my family and my community. The link to join this challenge is down in the description below, and I want to encourage you to take the VIP experience where I'll be doing 1 hour of Q&A every day of the challenge, and nowhere else do I avail myself in this capacity. And so I hope to see you on the Content to Cash challenge coming up.
Okay, so you say like you get the repetitions, but did you have like a few voices that you were like, these
hundreds, like Frankenstein's monsters verses of voices is the first thing you have to do is to care. Then when you care, you've got to be on the relentless quest for better. It's no different to you and your YouTube channel. Is you decided you wanted to do it because you saw some other people do it. You did it a few times and you kind of suck when you first do it. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking around at where other people are doing it better and you're borrowing little pieces of notes. And I'm setting up a studio right now backing our new office space, and stepping in here this morning, the first thing I'm doing, I'm looking at like cables and like stands and arms and things, because there's 100 choices you can make on these.
Yeah.
And if you don't have to make all 100 choices to get to the choice that's right, then you fast track. So you're looking at mentors, you're looking at listening to CDs and tapes. I've been watching speakers since I was 12. I had Jim Rohn CDs in my car. I thought when I'm old and gray, one day I'd like to be a professional speaker. You then find yourself in leadership positions. So I was leading teams of 30, 40, 50, 60 people at 18, 19, 20 years of age. Mm. And everybody was twice my age. And I got a lot of age discrimination in those environments where like I was 19 and I looked about 13. So people are like, this kid's my manager? Like WTF, that can't be cool. What do we do about that? And I learned that I could never get people to do anything I would tell them to do. Like, no way would that work. So all I'd do is I'd just study the other successful people in the organization. And if I see somebody that was crushing it in something that I knew you, Omar, wanted to get better at, I wouldn't tell you what to do. I'd say, hey, I've been watching what Rich is doing. And you know that Rich is getting significantly better results than you in this one area. And there's 3 things that Rich does that you don't do. Would you like to know what those 3 things are? You're like, yeah, give me. So I would coach and lead and train other people just through being a third person messenger.
That's really cool.
And what starts to happen when you do that is you get clues from the habits that are put down by top performers. And outside of the normal hard work, grit, determination, hustle, product knowledge, like all the table stakes stuff, the one thing that blew my mind from a commonality in every great performer in those retail sales environments was they all had efficiency in their word tracks. They'd all built not so much scripts, but models and playbooks and frameworks that for the common and recurring moments that they stepped into on repeat, they had utility.
So good.
And that utility gave them efficiency. That efficiency gave them conversion. And then amongst those, there then becomes like repetitions of sequences of words. So I've just been re-engineering from other people's brilliance since.
So good. I'm in a mastermind, and the guy that runs it, he's a brilliant communicator. He took the alphabet.
Yeah.
And for any question that is surrounding the word, like he uses like alliteration or suffix or prefixes in 3s.
Okay.
To create this arsenal.
Yeah.
That when you go through a Q&A, you almost every time you answer a question, there's a framework or something.
Yep. And he's memory pegged it out everywhere. Yep.
Yeah. And he's like, this is how you get people to like surround you in a hallway, is like, because people are like, what the heck, this guy's brilliant. And he's like, no, I just was intentional. Yeah. And I took the time over my career to build these out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think a simple example of that is if you want people to surround you in a hallway because you've got wisdom to share with them, you have to be able to communicate to them. Yet the big mistake that almost everybody makes when they're trying to communicate to other people is they tell the me story, the me, my, I story.
Yeah.
And the result...
that's how you can tell right away that like you're really starting out.
Yeah. We were at a sort of cocktail happy hour last night, and it was interesting. I was there with a friend of mine called Dave, and it was a mixer that we were on the side of, really. We weren't part of it, but there was one person in the group that Dave wanted to catch before we went to dinner. And that classic example of people came up to us, assumed we were part of the exact same group that we're on the side of, spent 23 minutes waxing lyrical at me, asked me not a single question, telling me everything about how my market must be.
Yeah.
Because the only thing she knew is that I live in New York City. So she just assumed that I was a loan originator in New York and told me everything about how to do my job as a loan originator in New York City. And I'm not a loan originator in New York City.
Yeah.
The 23 minutes of nervous life just expunged on me with no questions and no input and no value. At the end of it, it was like, it was great to meet you, she said. I'm like, you didn't meet me. It was my inside voice.
Wow.
But it happens everywhere.
Yeah. And like a lack of self-awareness sometimes. How did you grow in your self-awareness?
I think I'm naturally introverted. People make assumptions that just because you can jump on a stage and speak in front of thousands of people, that you are like hyper confident or that you are looking to be the life and soul of the party. I can turn it on like it's a switch, but my natural behavior is to be introverted. And one of my favorite phrases is that the second mouse gets the cheese. And when you think about that literally, like the first mouse ends up in mousetrap, correct?
Yeah. The
beauty in that statement that I can't stop thinking about is how hard is it to be the second mouse? Like I can understand that it's hard to win. It's even harder to intentionally come second. Like, how do you get the silver medal on purpose? You can come last. You can do your best and see where you land. But how do you come second on purpose? And in influential moments in conversation, it's the ability to know how to come second that is the superpower. It's how can you be the second voice in the conversation, not the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, the second, and then you can hold court.
I like that. And I like that because it's encouraging to know that you don't have to be the first. And if you see someone doing it great or doing something awesome, it's okay that you
stand on the sidelines.
Exactly.
Stand on the sidelines and wait for your moment, and your moment will come. And if you have the ability to observe, what you garner is the most useful tool in conversation and in communication as a whole. You garner context. The missing ingredient for you to be able to articulate your value, for you to be able to share your brilliance, for you to be able to tell somebody that you can help them, for you to be able to sell your services, is your context of their scenario. And too many people miss their chance to gain the context. They go straight past it, and then what they're trying to communicate is they're trying to communicate into a void that they know nothing about. So they're guessing.
Yeah.
And it's a spray and pray technique of either trying to help somebody in a leadership environment where it's advice monster, or it's trying to sell something without understanding that the other person may or may not need it. There's a thing we teach in our certification programs, which is never, ever, 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 ever tell somebody that they should do anything, buy anything, accept any piece of advice unless you can say these words first. And the words would encourage them to say first are the words because of the fact that you said. Because of the fact that you said blank, blank, and blank, then for those reasons, I'd recommend you do blank, blank, and blank. That's influence, because your influence is with the emotional intelligence that you understand the needs, requirements, obstacles, puzzles, and problems that exist in the other person's life. It's not about embellishing the features and benefits of your brilliant idea, your brilliant product, your brilliant service. It's about being able to show them that either your idea, your product, or your service is going to help them achieve something that they've said is important to them.
Yeah.
That easy. It's
really
that
good.
hard.
Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of people wanting to like start courses.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm trying to become like the guy that says, don't start a course. Because in essence, what people are doing is they're thinking that if I could just hunker down for a couple hours and shoot all this content, and because I would believe that this is all people need. Yep. But number one, that will get outdated very quickly.
Yeah.
You're not considering context of the other person watching it from the other side. Unless you've been doing it for decades, maybe you can get a little bit of that. But adding a level of, actual either group calls or one-to-one, make it a program. And that way it'll actually be more beneficial.
You should never put something in a course unless you've trained it multiple times to real live audiences. Like, what right do you have to believe that tens of thousands of people are going to find this valuable online when you haven't found 3 people in a room that have said that was useful?
Good.
Like get like the 1-to-1, the 1-to-3, the 1-to-8 to go, that works. And you got to round it off. Like and I give some credibility of where I'm coming from here, is I've been in the personal development info space since around 2007. So we've been in this world for a while. Before podcasts, I had a weekly and then a monthly newsletter that we sent to people, but it was an audio newsletter. It was a 72-minute CD. We physically mailed them, put them in envelopes and send them out to people. We've been doing books, CD programs, physical binders of products. Like,
what happens when somebody comes up to you and they're like, bro, I have the original CD?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I love it. We're building like something out in the new office space where it's like a little bit of a treasure trove for a wall. It's fun to watch the story, but like we've been doing courses before people even knew what an online course was. Like you'd get the binders, you get stuff shipped out to your home, etc. It's been fun. But how do you get to do that is because what you're doing is you're packaging experience. If you haven't got the experience, don't package it, because you're just packaging an idea. You're just packaging a guess, and that's irresponsible.
Good.
It's a big risk. And I wrote my little book, Exactly What to Say, and people say, how long did it take you to write the book? And this is a book that's now sold over 3 million copies and in 30 odd different languages, etc. And my real answer is I did it in a weekend. I'm like, you did it in a weekend? I'm like, yeah, I wrote the book in a weekend. They're like, yeah, but how? And my answer is, well, one is it's material I've been workshopping for about 20 years, trained it to around 800 different industries. I've been sprinkling it into speeches for somewhere like ever. Two is it's actually the rewrite of a book that I wrote called Magic Words. Three is I'd recently produced an audio program for a very specific niche industry called Exactly What to Say that I'd sold as a 30,000 unit 3-disc CD set that was very well received of the content. So what I did is I took the transcription of the 3-disc CD, I ran it through a transcription service, I got that back, I used that as the foundation for my book, I built the learned experience in it, and a day and a half into it, I've got a manuscript. Wrote it in a weekend, but what I then did is I edited it through every possible lens that I could think would be useful. So I took the book start to finish and I said, well, if I'm a new salesperson, how would this help me? I took the book and said, well, if I'm an experienced business leader, how would this help me? I took the book and said, well, if I'm a mother of 2 kids looking to start a side hustle, how would this help me? If I am an experienced photographer, how would this help me? If I'm an accountant, how would it help me? I took it through like 50 different avatars and edited it top to bottom through them. Because if you want to create something that has universal appeal, you don't create vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
What you look to be able to do is you look to be able to say, I need to know all the people that encapsulate the everybody I'm looking to serve and check it's a fit for all of them, not create something that has all the sharp edges around it.
Yeah. How you land on principles.
Correct.
And principles can apply to every industry.
And that's the cool thing about the book, Exactly What to Say, as well, is that I get some flack sometimes. They're like, it's not a real book. Look at it. It's tiny. You can read it cover to cover in 72 minutes. I'm like, a point.
Can I tell you like the genius of it? Because if you go to an event and you do your thing, where everybody in the room listens to it, everyone's got at least an hour and a half home flight minimum or drive. So I was able to be immersed in your genius from the time you spoke on your event. And then because that book is fairly short, I was able to consume it even. And then I was like, dude, this is actually like a great like like people have the webinars, they have like the Zoom calls, but this was great because you automated something that, you know, a lot of people who want to get better have audibles and stuff like that. So
and they're good to go and Kindle download instantly. And even the book is a paperback on purpose. We queue jumped the hardcover version because I'm looking for it to live in a glove box of somebody's car. I'm looking for it to be in the bag and get kicked around and dog-eared and post-it notes in it, etc. It's intention in the product design. Yeah.
It's crazy how important. I've been told that people don't buy what you sell, they buy what you say.
Yeah.
And disagree or agree?
I don't disagree. They buy what you say. I think people buy a lot of things. So they may well buy what you say. I think they buy a feeling. I think one of the things that people buy books for is because it makes them feel smarter. I think people buy a perceived outcome. So some form of either guaranteed or highly predictable different set of circumstances or outcome as a result of the interaction. This is why many people struggle even to sell a course or to sell a program or sell their services, is because they're talking about the product, not the outcome of what that product could mean to other people. And people say you need the features and the benefits. I'm like, no, you need the benefit of the benefit of the benefit. You got to keep going on this. And nobody wants their haircut. They don't want the haircut because it's going to make them look younger. Don't want the haircut because it's going to make them look more professional. They don't want, like, you keep digging and you keep digging and you keep digging. It's like, no, they want their husband or spouse or partner, etc., to continually find them sexy if you keep digging, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something like that. Or they want a reinvention in the workplace that's going to allow them to be able to perceived at a higher level towards a promotion. It's like, no, they didn't want a haircut. They wanted a promotion.
Yeah. How can you help people see that benefit of what it is they do? Because I find this is what I essentially say that is. It's like taking what you do or help people with and having it have more appeal.
Sure.
When you focus on the outcome or the payoff, or the benefit, because like you said, like we're always in the weeds, especially when we're first starting out, in our businesses.
What I would do if I don't know that about my customers, my consumers, my people, even your spouse or a friend, is I'd ask a 2-question questionnaire. And the 2-question questionnaire goes like this. The first question is, what 3 things do you like best about? So give me a profession for starters. And we'll play this.
Content creation.
Content creation. So I'd go to your primary customer base, your most loyal fans, and I'd say, what 3 things do you like best about? And maybe even do this in the comments for Omar now, is like, what 3 things do you like best about Omar's channel? Answer those questions. Then you can ask the second question of this questionnaire. And the second question is, if there was one thing you could change about it, what would the one thing be? And what you learn from those 2 questions is profound. You could do the same with a friend that you care about. Hey, what 3 things do you like best about our relationship and the value that I bring to it? And hey, if there was one thing that we could change about it, what would the one thing be? How much would life get better if you just asked those 2 questions and listened to the answers? What it does is it provides a frame, because when you ask somebody what 3 things they like best, they give you a very specific sequence. The first thing they tell you is the first thing they can think of. The second thing they'll tell you is almost certainly their favorite or most important thing. And the third is their favorite nice to have, like the sprinkles on the top of the cupcake. And the reason that's true is, imagine you're at a fairground, right? And you got to shoot a basketball through a hoop to win a stuffy, a cuddly toy, etc. What do you do with the first ball? Well, you take the ball and you just you size the thing up, right? You have a go and see how this works. And if it swoops, like, now we're good. But the likelihood is you miss with 1. So what do you now do with 3 shots? The second one is the most important shot. I need to get this one right. You get yourself steady. You start to think about it. You don't want to be embarrassed and not get the stuffy. So you loop that one and you swoop it, and now you're good. You got the stuffy in the bag. The next shot's just for fun. So here you get a chance to play. That's why when you ask somebody what 3 things they like best, you get more meaningful information. The mistake that many people make is they ask questions like, what's your favorite thing? What's your number 1? What's your top takeaway? These are stupid questions. And I'll explain why they're stupid questions, because they're hard to answer. Like, what's your favorite place to eat in the world?
Good night.
Right? You got an answer if you got an answer that you've given before.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, like, what's your favorite means of, what's your favorite railway station in England? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I said, what are some of your favorite ways that you like to travel? What are some of your favorite ways? With that comes into head and out of mouth. There's no processing.
Yeah.
Like, what's the favorite place you've ever visited? I've visited so many different places. I've got to sequence all these things. So whenever you speak in absolutes, you make it very hard for the other person. We're going to be at a 2-day conference here, and somebody's going to say, what's your top takeaway? I'm going to say it to somebody like having just consumed 16 hours of insane content, and say, what's your top takeaway? And you're like, I don't know yet. I haven't decided. Whereas if you said, what's maybe one thing or something that's front of mind right now that you think you might put into practice as a result of today, you deliver it loose and fluffy, they tell you their top takeaway.
Yeah. That's so good. It like the way you ask the questions.
Right.
And hyper intentionality behind questions. This is why you say it. All this stuff can make you better at parenting, at being a husband or a wife, or a leader, or a content creator, a speaker. Like you said, when you went to the room this morning, you said you actually verbalized all the questions you asked yourself.
Right.
Like, where's this room? Where are people? Like, Well, yeah, I guess the question that I would like to ask you is there like some go-to questions on top of those two? Like I know you said those two, but let's say you didn't have anyone to ask that question to. You asked yourself those questions.
The kinds of questions that you ask yourself stepping into a high stakes environment is like, what should I definitely not forget today? Then also, how can I make this fun for me? And then also, where am I sitting in the bigger picture? So in a speech environment, this is obvious, but it's like, who comes before me? Who comes after me? What's the energy of the space going to be? But isn't that same thing true if you're stepping into your house at the end of a day? You might have something you want to share or something you want to say, but what is the field of play? What is my role on that field of play at that given moment in that given situation in time? And this is the emotional intelligence that's mostly missing. People aren't reading the moment. They're so up in their own head about self, what I want to share. And as a speaker, people have said to me often is like, do you not get nervous speaking in front of a large audience? And my answer is, well, yeah, of course I get nervous because otherwise I wouldn't care. And they're like, well, you're doing an hour to 6,000 people. And I'm like, well, it's not about my hour. It's about 6,000 hours of productivity of some of the most highly driven, highly valuable entrepreneurs in the world that are getting together at an event. I'm not responsible for an hour speech. I'm responsible for 6,000 hours of productivity. That's a different gig. So how would I translate that same thing as a content creator? Well, if you want 100 people to watch your videos and your video is 10 minutes long, then behave like you're responsible for 100 times 10 minutes. But if you want to have 250,000 views on your video and your video is an hour long, then care about the fact that you're responsible for 250,000 hours of productivity of people. And that raising of self-stakes allows you to get ready and prepare in a different way. Too many people are like, I'm turning out my short video. If you want it to get to scale, treat it like it has the scale, prepare for it like it has the scale, and create it like it's for an audience as big as what you might want. And it's kind of Kevin Costner Field of Dreams stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Or at least envisage that you are getting ready for a bigger moment than the one that you're currently serving.
You've kind of bridged so many ways of communicating, and you see all the ways that you can communicate. We have actually speaking on stages in front of people, both virtually and in person. You have written copy or written books, emails, and things like that. We have video. What have you seen is most effective?
People say to me, even with things like the books that we've written, is like, how does this work on social media? How does this work on the internet, on web pages, etc.? My response is these are tools that help in conversational language. Conversational language can exist in every modality. I was doing a training session for a large group of multi-level marketers the other day, and they asked me to look at their messaging. And obviously what they're trained on is lots of copy paste, DMs, lots of like, here's what I did, you should send the same. And there were a number of big mistakes that I saw in their communications on repeat. And I just consolidated it back into a training piece that I shared with them. And one of the first big mistakes was putting too much information into the written word. The mistake that many people make when they are even responding to comments in content or when they are responding to DMs or interest is they show up and throw up. And I'll share a simple review process. Like I got quite a few reviews for a book online. And people say to me, Phil, I loved your book, right? Like that's the inbound message that comes on Insta or wherever it might come. They say, I love the book. Most people's response to that is like, thank you so much. And they just shut the conversation down with a monologue, or thank you so much. Like the best form of thank you can give me is to go to the Amazon page and do me a review. And like the person just said, yeah. So instead, slow the process down and allow communication to play backwards and forwards. This is riskier, but you operate in a gray space. Gray spaces are humanizing because they are imperfect. People want to be like, what's the black or the white answer to this? I'm like, no, we stay in the gray. Gray spaces are safe spaces because they're play spaces. Here's where you can create change because both people are changing at the same time. If you want to influence others, you have to be open to influence. Let's just play this same example out from a review piece. I told this group that they show up and throw up too much. They're like, no, we don't. Look at all this stuff. I show them like, oh yeah, maybe we do. So what happens is I show them my review process. Somebody says, love the book. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. Like, Is there something specific in the book that stood out to you that made you feel like it was worth outreaching today? And there's a hesitancy even in what I'm typing here. And then they'll gush about something very practical that made the book work. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, and then how are you going to use that in your world? Like, how's that going to impact what's going to happen next for you? And they tell me. They're the ones that are writing the big responses. Like, this is cool. And then I say, where'd you buy the book? And they tell me, and more often than not, it's Amazon. I'm like, wow. I said, did you buy it yourself on Amazon or did somebody buy it for you? They said, I bought it myself. I say, have you ever left an Amazon review? Now there's a yes, no answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I'm winning.
Yeah.
They say yes. You say, well, how would you feel about maybe leaving one for the book? They'll say, yeah. You say, you're probably wondering what to write. If you're wondering what to write, you just wrote it. Or if they say no, I say, how would you feel about me being your first? And we drive reviews like crazy.
So good.
But what is there? There's a 6, 7, 8, 9 part exchange on that. People do it, I'm sure, no doubt, on comments on your video. They're like, hey, that was super useful. Thanks, bro. Loved it. And you go, thank you. I loved making it.
Literally,
period.
Just 3 emojis, 3 fire emojis, 3 pound emojis.
Yeah.
It ends the conversation.
Like, but if you want to, this could go ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And you could have 6, 7, 8, 9. And this is why I get exhausted even on the social media game. Because like, if I'm going to do it right in comments to build a channel and those things, like I only know the way of doing it right. And that is timely. That takes a lot of energy to sit there and have 17-minute conversations back and forth with everybody who interacts with you.
Yeah.
And by alternative, it's like, well, let's set up ManyChat and then automate this whole thing. So we get them into our funnel and then drip all over them and hope that it's going to work. I think those models are going to have diminishing returns for everybody. And we're ignorant to think they won't, because we've had a decade where every content creator has benefited from globalization and the access to technology. And your little world got this big overnight because you could get customers everywhere. But that same thing has now happened for everybody. So all these circles just overlap and overlap and overlap. And now we're back at bursting capacity. None of us are looking for more apps on our phone. None of us are looking for more emails in our inbox. None of us are looking to spend more time on our devices. So you need to earn the relationships that you want for the people that you're looking to serve at a greater level than you ever have done before. And the tool for doing it is conversation.
So good. Like, I think I find myself asking you questions for like surface level things, and you're always you are very intentional. And I think it's just like you love the human experience so much that you can sense, where it's going but what still will always matter.
There's a button that lives inside the head of every decision maker on the planet. And it's a button that I've learned to call the show me that you know me button. If you want to win as a communicator, the only thing that you have to definitely always do is hit the show me that you know me button. Once you hit the show me that you know me button, now we're on the same side. We're traveling in the same direction. We're in alignment. And I think too many people try and fight upstream, that they're looking to win the argument, win the point, win the sale, etc. And they're in competition. Instead, just get aligned and show the other person that you know them. And in simple language is, if you can show somebody you know them and show them you understand their problems, they'll trust you with any solutions you recommend. If you try and sell somebody in your solution, they'll say that's not the problem. And it's friction. So if you want to go far today, reduce friction, reduce friction, reduce friction. And the way you reduce friction in conversation is you just stay a few steps ahead of it.
Really good. I've kind of like got a lot of people know me for very technical, like helpful tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah.
And even when I go speak at conferences and stuff, I typically bring a tactful, kind of talk. I've been told by a friend that like I need to start steering away from the tactful things on stage,
okay,
because it kind of overwhelms people.
Of course.
And you should focus more on like pictures, symbolism, I don't know, like And I'm like, I'm all for like getting better because I just go straight to like, here's.
Well, let's jam on this and see if we can actually refine something live in this conversation. So what might be a tactical action that you would teach people from stage in a YouTube fashion?
So like the last talk I gave last week, it was how to grow a podcast on YouTube.
Okay.
And I derived it from, I was very intentional on how I started this podcast because I've done it for so many people and I've grown other people's stuff. I'm like, I'm going to prove it's not luck.
Okay.
And so I have arrived at essentially what makes YouTube videos prepare themselves for max exposure.
Okay.
And so long story short, YouTube is, it speaks 2 languages, click-through rate, average viewer duration.
Okay.
The 2 things, that's the only 2 things you need to obsess about on YouTube. What gets a click?
Okay.
Well, the title and the thumbnail.
Okay.
So being really good at crafting titles and thumbnails, which is kind of like it is like an art form, but also I make it simple. If you want your title to do well, it should read like an article headline.
Okay.
And then your thumbnail, it's your title is for the algorithm. Your thumbnail is for the click.
Okay.
And so it shouldn't be an exact copy of the title.
Okay. I'm going to take some notes as we're doing on this. This is cool.
Why?
Because we're going to reshape a talk in this discussion.
Oh, I love it. Let's go.
I hope to be super helpful. So what we're saying is click-through rate.
Average view duration.
Average view duration.
It's like the foundation of a successful YouTube video.
Sure. And what's the main point of the speech? Like
the main point is essentially how you start your videos.
Yep.
Determines how your videos are going to perform.
Okay. And why does it matter? Like, why do I even want a YouTube channel or highly performing video? Why should I even care?
Because being able to expedite the trust factor in business or with a brand could happen digitally, and YouTube is the platform to do that.
Okay. But why should I even care about that in its entirety? Like, I've got a good business. It's been doing good for so long anyway. Like, why YouTube?
YouTube, because I believe YouTube's the greatest brand builder, and brand can't be bought.
Okay. Why do you believe that?
I believe brand can't be bought because brand's built over time.
Okay.
And to pay for a transactional brand it won't last.
Okay. Do the rules that apply to YouTube apply anywhere else?
Yeah, I believe in regards to branding, yes.
Where else do they apply?
I mean, they online, your digital presence.
Okay. And only online?
It would be the digitization of your reputation, which is what Rory Vaden says.
That's what Rory will class as a personal brand.
Yeah. But I would say, in person, it matters too.
Okay, so these are principles for life?
Yes.
This has nothing to do with YouTube.
But for sure.
Okay. So this could be a speech about like your brilliance amplified. And
I love that.
It could be turned into a series of steps that
share this note with me.
That then,
wow,
if it's all about the headline, well, step 1 is it's all about the headline. It's all about the headline. So what's the speech called?
Right now?
Yeah.
It was how to grow your podcast on YouTube.
Okay. And if there was 1,000 speeches and that was the title of the speech and it was a giant exhibition hall and people could choose their own adventure, why would people be running to that one as opposed to any of the other 999 speeches they could come to?
Great question. The event was called the Podcast Summit.
Okay.
People know me as the YouTube guy.
Okay.
And I'm not making an assumption. YouTube is usually the hardest platform to grow on as opposed to all the other ones.
Okay.
But would it have been probably more attended, like my talk, if the title was stronger? Obviously, sometimes you're given the title by the host.
Yeah, and sometimes you can give them a better title back.
Exactly.
Like YouTube will give you a title if you like. You can call the video like anything.mp4 and upload it in the way that it was given to you. That could be its title if you choose to, but you choose to edit it, right?
100.
And what I'd be looking at is to say how can the talk be an example of the message? So if what you've got is to win on YouTube, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, the talk needs to be an example of it too. So your holding slide is a thumbnail. your speech title is a video description, and it's done on purpose. And actually, I'd be opening the speech and said, well, what if the speech was called this? Or what if the speech was called this? Or what if the speech was called this? Or what if the speech was called this? People would be like, I'm getting the point. So you don't have to make the point with a load of YouTube videos. You have to say, like, how you label and how you package things is going to help somebody decide whether they're going to want to do business with you. The same would be true that if you're a hairdresser in the audience, you could say I do a cut and blow dry, or you could say I do a transformational experience that provides you with a brand new image to help create the brand new you. Like, what do you want, a brand new image and a brand new you, or do you want to cut and blow dry? They've got different price points attached to them. The same is true everywhere, but like the title helps somebody understand whether they want to open the box.
Yeah.
So you start to turn these into principles. And you start to be able to say, well, actually, I'm building an evergreen talk here that has a number of steps on it.
Really good.
And then you look at it and go, okay, well, let's be counterintuitive. It is, people say like it's the first X number of seconds to make a first impression, right? What's your view on that on YouTube?
You want 60% retention after 30 seconds.
Okay. And we've grown up in a world where people are like, you've got 3 seconds to make a first impression. You've never got a second chance to make a first impression. And all this that we've heard for life, you've now got a counterintuitive idea. This is actually has nothing to do with the first 3 seconds. It's actually about the first 0.3 of a second. That's the thumbnail. That's the, I'm going to judge you in a nanosecond. You haven't got 3, 5, 7, whatever. But you've then got to be able to win all the credibility you need to earn the relationship in 30 seconds or more. So when you meet somebody for the first time, how do you captivate in 30 seconds or more? In your YouTube video, you've got 30 seconds or more. When somebody steps into your retail store, can you keep them for 30 seconds or more? The same principle that shows up on YouTube is now showing up everywhere. If you want to be able to win a date and you'd like that person to be able to go on a long-term relationship, yeah, you got to look the part. You got to win the first impression. You got to get them to be able to swipe left or right or whatever it is they're doing. And then you got to get them past the first 30 seconds in the date, because they're going to make a big decision after 31, 32, 33. The rules of YouTube are the rules of life. Like, this is what you're starting to be able to build a talk around.
So good.
And you take everything that you know is true as to how to build a podcast on YouTube, blah, 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 and you say, well, actually, how to build an army of followers, how to build a reliable reputation, how to build a thought leadership personal brand in every area of life. You're just going to happen to use YouTube as your credibility point. And what you've discovered is the rules that work for YouTube work in every other area of life.
Good.
So it needs some work. But
where do people go? Like, that sounds like you have a go-to, like, yeah.
I do this stuff for fun. And we do a couple of masterminds a year with people who want to build speaking businesses. And I whiteboard things up and I help them pull a keynote out of their expertise and turn what they've been doing forever into a reliable 7-step formula and what 7, 9, 11, whatever it might be. But what I believe as thought leaders, you've got to get your content to a point that your content is the answer to every question.
That's so
right? So if an organization is puzzled, I know the problem. The problem is that there are people in their organization that don't know exactly what to say. If somebody's having relationship difficulties, it's because one of those people or both those people don't know exactly what to say. If somebody's looking to be able to get a pay rise in their workplace, because they don't know exactly what to say. If people have a culture issue inside their workplace and they're not getting on with each other, it's because they don't know exactly what to say. It's the answer to every question in my world. And I have to be biased on that. I know that there are other people who have other answers to the same questions, but my answer to every question is get better at knowing exactly what to say. And chances are you'll make a dent. Even take the current political climate. Wouldn't things be better if more people just knew exactly what to say? You know, that's what I'd be pushing on your stuff right now is how do you take what you know to be true and put it to test on the big field of play and then zip it back? And YouTube is just a metaphor now.
Wow. Because that is just like beyond. Mm-hmm. That's how you pre-frame people for something.
And that stops you delivering a large format training.
Right.
At scale, that actually that training would be better set where those people were in front of their computers and that they were actually able to take action on it, and it moves you into an area of genuine sort of thought leadership.
Yeah.
Where they can learn and go, oh, I get it.
I think when you say like knowing, you know, if they knew exactly what to say, or if you knew exactly what to say, would you say at the lowest level, it starts with care?
Always starts with care. If you want to change anything in your life, you got to start caring about it, and not just like kind of care.
Yeah.
Obsessive levels of care.
Yeah.
Caring more than anybody else would care about it in the world. And you don't get to win at anything without caring. Talent will get you in the game, but it will never get you on the podium.
So good. Bro, this has been amazing. Thank you for giving me some game. I need you to share that document with me. And honestly, like, I think I could, for a guy like me who, like, I mean, yeah, I could spend more prep. If I spend more time in prep, and probably ask even better questions to myself while I'm preparing. Oh my goodness. Like I just saw my communication go to another level just by just that few minutes.
If something is important enough for you to put it on your schedule, make it important enough to get ready for the time you put on your schedule.
Okay.
Right? If you're saying I'm giving an hour to this, then find an hour at least to get ready for the hour that you've said is important. And that again can be simplified down to, for me, one of the most important critical conversations that I'm relentlessly working in my personal life is what comes out of my mouth in the first 15 seconds when I re-enter the home following a trip. The amount of thoughtful thought I put onto that is ridiculous because it can change my life. You know, get it right amplifies upwards. Get it wrong, it could destroy my life.
Yeah.
So those moments matter.
Dude, I appreciate you. Where can people find you and buy your stuff?
Yeah, I'm Phil M. Jones. So if you put the middle initial in anywhere you're searching online, you'll find me a lot easier than all of the random Phil Joneses in the world. Head to exactlywhattosay.com. You'll find tons of resources there. And if people want to continue this conversation, best place to find me is Instagram at Phil M. Jones UK. Tell me you found me on Omar's show and let me know.
He'll start a conversation and he's going to ask you what was the best thing you got out of the thing. You know, was there one thing in particular? Can you go leave a review on Omar's podcast?
Put it to the test. Let's go.
Dude, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.